The night I rejected the Alpha King, I felt the forest itself hold its breath. I did not know then that refusing him would be the first step toward becoming something far greater than his Luna. My name is Ravenna, and I have lived alone in these mountains since my grandmother passed 3 winters ago. The villagers below call me the Witch of the Pines, the strange woman who speaks to herbs and sleeps beneath open skies. They do not understand that solitude is not loneliness when the forest is your companion. My cabin stands at the edge of the known world, where the ancient trees grow so thick that sunlight must fight to reach the ground, where the silence is so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat echoing back from the mountains. I was gathering frozen yarrow near the river when I first sensed him. The air changed in a way I cannot describe. It thickened with something ancient, something that made the hairs on my arms rise beneath my woolen cloak. The birds stopped singing. The wind stopped breathing. I turned slowly, and there he stood on the opposite bank of the frozen river. He was not entirely a man. That was the first thing I understood. His form was tall and broad, wrapped in a gray fur mantle that seemed to grow from his very skin. His hair was white as the snow around us, long and wild, falling past shoulders that carried the weight of centuries. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. Amber, burning with inner fire, filled with a hunger I could not name. Scars crossed his face like rivers on a map, telling stories of battles I would never know. When he spoke, his voice carried across the frozen water as though the wind itself obeyed him. He said my name, not the name the villagers use, but my true name, the one my grandmother whispered to me on her deathbed. He said he had been searching for me. He said I was his destined Luna, the one foretold to stand beside him and rule the ancestral forest. He said I belonged to him. I ran through the snow and the bare branches that clawed at my cloak. My lungs burned with frozen air, and my heart pounded against my ribs like a caged bird. I did not stop until I reached my cabin, and even then I barred the door and sat with my back pressed against it until dawn. I told myself I had imagined him, but I knew this was a lie even as I spoke it to the empty room. He came again the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. Each time he appeared at the edge of the clearing where my cabin stood, watching with those amber eyes that seemed to see through wood and stone and flesh to something deeper within me. He never crossed the threshold uninvited. He never raised his voice or his hand in threat. He simply waited with the patience of the mountains themselves, as though time meant nothing to him, as though my resistance was merely a temporary inconvenience that would crumble like spring ice. His name was Kale, and he was the Alpha King of the wolf hybrids who ruled the deep forest. I learned this not from him, but from the second visitor who came to my door on a night when the full moon hung heavy and silver in the cloudless sky. She appeared without warning, a scratch at my door so soft I almost mistook it for wind. I opened it to find a woman crouched on my threshold, her eyes scanning the darkness as though she expected pursuit. She was lean and wiry, her hair the color of dark copper, her eyes a pale gold that caught the firelight and reflected it back like a wild creature. She too was not entirely human. I could see it in the way she moved, fluid and predatory, and in the pointed tips of her ears that peeked through her tangled hair. She said her name was Siren, and she had come to warn me of dangers I did not yet comprehend. I let her in because the cold was bitter, and because something in her eyes spoke of pain I recognized. She sat by my fire and told me of Kyle, of his kingdom hidden in the heart of the forest, of the laws that bound his people for generations. She told me of the Luna tradition, how the Alpha King chose a mate not through love, but through claiming, through a bond that could not be broken once sealed, a bond that would bind a woman's soul to her alpha until death. She told me that Kale had sensed my dormant blood, the hybrid lineage that slept within me, inherited from ancestors I had never known. I asked her how she knew all this. She looked into the flames and said she had once been part of his pack. She had served him, believed in him, until she saw what his power truly cost. She had watched him break those who defied him, and one moonless night, she had fled into the wilderness, choosing uncertain death over certain servitude. She said she had been watching me since Kale first found me. She said she saw something in me that reminded her of herself, a fierce independence that glowed like an ember beneath the surface. She said I had a choice, but only if I understood what I truly was. That night, Seren told me the truth of my bloodline. My grandmother had not been merely a healer. She had been a hybrid, one of the last of a line that chose to live among humans rather than submit to wolf kings. She had hidden her nature and done the same to me when I was born. The ritual she performed on the night of my birth had locked away the wolf within me, leaving me human in all but the faintest instincts. But the lock was weakening with each passing year. Kale had sensed it, she explained, the way a predator senses wounded prey. That was why he wanted me so desperately. A dormant hybrid awakened under an alpha's claiming bond would be bound to him forever, her power feeding his own, her will subsumed into his. I would not be his partner or his equal. I would be his possession, a source of strength he could draw upon, a trophy to display before his pack. I asked Seren what I should do, my voice barely a whisper in the flickering firelight. She said I had two paths stretching before me like divergent trails in a dark forest. I could let Kale claim me, accept the bond he offered, become his Luna, and lose myself in his shadow as so many women had before me. Or I could awaken my own wolf, on my own terms, through ancient rites that did not require an alpha's intervention, and become something he could not control or consume. The second path was dangerous, she warned me, her voice grave with the weight of knowledge paid for in suffering. It meant breaking the seal my grandmother had placed with such care, facing the wild nature I had never known existed, and doing so without an alpha's bond to anchor me to sanity. Many who attempted such solitary awakenings lost themselves to madness as the wolf devoured the woman, or died in the physical transformation when body could not match spirit. But Seren offered to help me navigate these treacherous waters. She said she owed a debt to every woman Kale had ever claimed, every Luna who had faded into a hollow reflection of her former self, and guiding me would be her repayment to their memory. I did not decide that night. I lay awake until the fire burned to embers and the cabin grew cold, listening to Seren breathe in the corner where she slept, curled like the wolf she was beneath her human skin. I thought of my grandmother, of the secrets she had taken to her grave, of the life I had built in solitude among the pines, of the amber eyes that watched me from the tree line with patience that spanned centuries. I thought of what it would mean to belong to someone so completely that even my soul was not my own. I thought of what it would mean to risk everything on the chance of becoming something new. When dawn came and painted the snow outside in shades of pale gold and rose, I made my choice. Seren led me deep into the forest, to places I had never ventured in all my years of wandering, where the trees grew so ancient and so thick that daylight barely penetrated their interwoven canopy. We walked for 2 days through snow that reached my thighs, climbing higher into the mountains where the air grew thin and sharp as a blade of ice. She showed me a cave hidden behind a frozen waterfall, its entrance invisible until you stood directly before it, its walls covered in runes that glowed faintly blue in the perpetual darkness. This was a sacred place, she said with reverence in her voice. A place where hybrids had come for generations beyond memory to find themselves, to face the wolf within, to emerge transformed or not emerge at all. The old magic still lived here in the stones and the silence, patient and waiting as it had waited since the world was young. The awakening was not a single moment of dramatic transformation, but a process that took many days of pain and revelation. Seren taught me to listen to the part of myself I had always ignored or dismissed as fancy. The restlessness I felt during full moons that kept me pacing my cabin until dawn. The way my senses sharpened when danger was near, catching sounds and scents no human should perceive. The strange dreams of running through endless snow on 4 powerful legs, of howling at stars that seemed close enough to touch, of belonging to a pack I had never known. These were not fantasies born of loneliness. They were memories of a self I had never been allowed to become, whispering to me across the barrier my grandmother had built. She taught me to breathe with the rhythm of the forest, to let my heart beat slow until it matched the pulse of the earth beneath me, ancient and steady and eternal. She taught me to stop fighting the wildness that rose within me and instead invite it in like a long-lost friend, to make peace with the beast that shared my soul rather than treating it as an enemy to be conquered. The first time I felt the wolf rise within me fully, I wept until my tears froze on my cheeks. It was not pain alone, though there was pain that felt like being remade from the inside out. It was recognition. It was the feeling of meeting someone you have always known but never seen, someone who has loved you faithfully from the shadows all your life. She was fierce and proud, this wolf self, with silver fur like moonlight on snow and eyes that matched my own, and she had been waiting for me with infinite patience since the moment of my birth. Kyle found us on the 7th day of my awakening. He came through the frozen waterfall like a king entering his throne room, his white fur mantle shimmering with ice crystals, his amber eyes blazing with fury that made the runes on the cave walls flicker and dim. He looked at Seren with open contempt and called her a traitor, a thief who had stolen what belonged to him by ancient right. He looked at me with something more complex, a mixture of desire and rage, and something that might have been unwilling admiration. He said I had made a terrible mistake. He said the awakening I sought would destroy me without an alpha's bond to anchor my sanity. He said he was offering me salvation, protection from my own wild nature, a place of honor at his side as queen of the forest kingdom. He said he was not my enemy, but my destiny. He said no woman had ever refused him and lived without regret. I stood before him with my bare feet on the cold stone floor, and my wild hair tangled with frost, and my grandmother's blood singing in my veins, and I told him no. The word hung in the frozen air between us, like a blade unsheathed. I saw his face change, the mask of the benevolent king slipping to reveal something harder and more dangerous beneath. He asked if I truly understood what I was doing. I said I did. He asked if I understood that he could take me by force, that his claim superseded my will according to laws older than human memory or human civilization. I said I knew his laws well now. I said they were not mine to obey. He moved toward me with speed that blurred, and I felt the wolf within me surge forward to meet him. My vision sharpened until I could count the individual snowflakes falling through the waterfall behind him. My muscles tensed with power I had never possessed before. I heard Seren behind me shifting into a fighting stance, ready to defend me with her life, but I raised my hand to stop her. This was my battle. This was my becoming. This was the moment that would define everything I would be. Kale stopped. I saw surprise flash through his amber eyes, and then something deeper. Recognition. He could feel the wolf in me now, fully awake and utterly untamed, bound to no one and answering to no alpha's call. He could feel that I was no longer dormant prey waiting to be claimed, but something new and strange, something he had not anticipated in all his centuries of rule. He said I would regret this choice when winter closed in and loneliness gnawed at my heart. He said the forest would not protect me from his pack. He said I would die alone and forgotten in the snow, mourned by no one, remembered by nothing. Then he turned and vanished into the darkness beyond the frozen waterfall, and I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. Serene came to stand beside me in the sacred cave. She asked if I was afraid. I told her yes. I was terrified in ways I could not express. She said good. Fear meant I understood the weight of what I had done. Fear meant I was wise enough to survive. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life, a crucible of transformation that nearly broke me a dozen times. The awakening continued relentlessly, each day bringing new sensations and new strengths and new terrors I could not name. There were nights when the wolf threatened to consume me entirely, when I lost hours to a feral haze of instinct and hunger and woke miles from where I had fallen asleep, my hands bloodied from climbing rocks I did not remember climbing, my mouth tasting of prey I did not remember hunting. Seren stayed with me through all of it, patient and unwavering. She talked me back from the edge when the wildness grew too strong and threatened to drown the woman beneath. She reminded me of my name, my grandmother's voice, my cabin in the mountains, all the anchors that kept me human even as I became something magnificently more. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I learned to balance on the razor's edge between woman and wolf. The two halves of my nature found their equilibrium, not as separate beings sharing a body, but as one integrated self with two aspects. I could shift now, not fully into beast form, but into something gloriously between. My senses heightened beyond human comprehension. My strength doubled and redoubled, my instincts razor-sharp and utterly reliable. I was hybrid in truth at last, no longer dormant, no longer hidden, no longer afraid. Kyle did not forget me. His wolves came to the edges of my territory, watching from the shadows of the great pines, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. They did not attack, but their presence was a constant reminder that the Alpha King did not accept rejection, did not forgive defiance. Seren said he was patient as only an immortal could be patient. He believed that eventually I would weaken, that the loneliness of my chosen path would drive me back to him with pleas for mercy. He did not understand that I had never feared solitude the way his pack wolves did. He did not understand that the forest was my home, in ways his kingdom of hierarchy and submission could never be. The final confrontation came on the first night of spring, when the snow was melting into rushing streams and the rivers ran high with ice water and the first green shoots pushed through the dark soil. Kyle came alone this time, without his pack, without his royal mantle, wearing only simple gray furs and an expression I had never seen on his scarred face before. He stood at the edge of my clearing as he had so many times before, but something in his posture was different. The arrogance had dimmed. In its place was something that looked almost like grief, almost like longing. He said he had underestimated me, and that was a failure he had not committed in many centuries. He said he had never met a woman who could awaken without an alpha's bond, who could master her own wolf through sheer will and love alone. He said I had proven myself worthy of more than he had initially offered. He said he would give me true partnership now, genuine equality, a place beside him, rather than beneath him. He said he was not asking me to submit any longer. He was asking me to rule at his side as his equal. I listened to his words with my hybrid senses reading the truth beneath them, and I heard the loneliness that echoed through his soul like wind through an empty cave. I heard centuries of power that had brought him no peace, no true connection, no love that was not tainted by fear or obligation. I understood then that Kale was not the monster of Seren's warnings. He was broken in ways that power alone could never heal. He was a king who had forgotten that strength without love was just another kind of prison, the loneliest prison of all. I told him that I was sorry for his loneliness with genuine compassion I had not expected to feel. I told him that I understood the weight of power and the ache of isolation better now than I ever had before. But I told him that I could not be his cure, could not fill the emptiness within him that had grown for centuries. I had found my own path through the wilderness, my own small pack of two with Seren at my side, and it was enough. It was more than enough. I told him that being Luna was not about belonging to an Alpha King. It was about belonging to yourself, fully and completely and without apology. And I had finally learned how to do that. He stood in silence for a long moment while the spring wind rustled through the budding branches around us. The amber fire in his eyes flickered, and I saw the wolf within him, ancient and weary and desperately lonely, longing for something it could not name and did not know how to seek. Then he bowed his head, not in submission but in acknowledgement of something he could not possess. He said he would not trouble me again. He said my territory was my own now, under my own protection, outside the reach of his ancient laws forever. He said perhaps one day, When enough winters had passed and old wounds had healed, I might understand that he was not the monster the renegades painted him to be. I said perhaps, for anything is possible given enough time. I said time changed many things that seemed permanent as stone. I said I hoped he would find what he was searching for, even if it was not me. Even if he had to search for another 1,000 years. He turned and walked into the awakening forest, and I watched until his white form disappeared among the dark trees and the spring mist. I did not feel triumph at his departure. I felt a strange, quiet sorrow for him and his endless solitude, and beneath that sorrow, a profound peace I had never known before. Serene found me there as the sun rose fully above the mountains, and birdsong filled the air for the first time since autumn. She asked what had happened. I told her that I had rejected the Alpha King for the final time, and that he had accepted it with grace I had not expected from him. She looked at me with something like wonder glowing in her golden eyes, and said she had never seen anyone change him, even for a moment, even this much. I said I had not changed him. I had simply shown him that there were other ways to be strong, other paths through the wilderness of existence, and what he chose to do with that knowledge was his own affair. We walked back to my cabin together, the melting snow soft beneath our bare feet, the birds singing their ancient songs of renewal and return. Seren asked what I would do now with my freedom, with my power, with my newly integrated self. I said I would continue as I had always done, but with new purpose and new joy. I would heal those who came to me from the village, if they dared to seek the Witch of the Pines. I would tend my herbs and walk my forest and listen to the wolf who now walked beside me in my soul as friend and sister and self. I would be Luna, not to any king, but to the moon herself and to my own wild heart. She said she would stay if I wanted company on this solitary path. I said I would like that very much. The forest was wide and full of wonders, and solitude was sweeter when it was a choice shared with a friend rather than a sentence served alone. The villagers still whisper about the Witch of the Pines when they think no one is listening. They do not know that I hear them now with ears sharper than any human's, that I could track them through the deepest snow by scent alone, that their fear no longer touches me because I have faced far greater terrors and emerged transformed. They do not know that when I walk among the ancient trees, I am never truly alone. A copper-haired woman with gold eyes walks beside me, her laughter ringing through the pines, and somewhere in the deep forest, a scarred king watches the borders of my territory with something that might be respect, and does not cross them. I am Ravenna. I am wolf and woman both, integrated and whole and free. I took the risk of awakening when I could have accepted easy subjugation. I rejected the Alpha King who would have claimed my soul as his possession. I became Luna on my own terms, beholden to no one, powerful in my own right, answerable only to the moon and the forest and my own wild heart. The forest holds its breath no longer. It breathes with me now, steady and wild and free. And the rhythm of its breathing is the rhythm of home.